Previously on the Inspired Challenge podcast.
You mentioned having this circle of friends, and do you guys think that it's possible to have a circle of friends and, like you mentioned with the diversity, have that diversity, and like you had mentioned that all of the friends are believers. Now, do you think that it's smart to have a basis of that, like all of them be believers, and then, or what if there are friends that some are believers, some are non-believers, and basically knowing when to listen to certain friends and when to kind of put them on mute in your mind? Are there friends that you have in mind that you do that with? And if so, can those be the closest? Or would you say to always make those people the dimes, the nickels?
I mean, I know for me, I wouldn't consider myself having like a lot of friends, but I like at least talk to a lot of people, and I have a lot of people that I'm like, I talk to a good amount, I guess. But I know some of my friends are not believers at all. But I feel like that doesn't mean they can't give as good input, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying with that, of where there's certain aspects, especially when it comes to something like spiritual.
Yeah, like I'll pose an example, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're having issues in a relationship. Now, your secular friend may say, "Dude, you're seeing the red flags. This is your chance to get the heck out of bum. Like get out of here. There's no point. You have plenty of options, dude." However, your biblical friends might tell you, "Hey, man, you know what? Talk to them about it. See if this is something that they're adamant on. See if there's a place for compromise. And if there's a certain amount that there's willing to go with it and you're okay with it, do your best with it and just keep working on it." So you have both of these friends want the best for you. One says, "Hey man, don't take that." And then the other says, clearly they give the more kind of sanctified answer.
Yeah.
So in that instance, do you have one of them this is coming from something that has no biblical inspiration, the secular advice. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of, tell them I appreciate the advice, but I'm just going to mute it, because if somebody's going to tell me to get the heck out of bum, I at least want it to come from a biblical perspective instead of just like, I'm just telling you to do this because this is just what I think.
Yeah. No. I think for sure that's smart. I think for me, I love to explore my options for every option, kind of thing, or every situation, every decision I have to make. I'm someone that likes. It's weird because I hate reading and stuff like that, but I like researching stuff. Yeah. And like understanding what will happen when I make these decisions, and like what outcome will happen whenever I do a specific thing. Now, I'll be honest, I don't do it all the time, and it's definitely not easy to do. It's always easier to kind of just, I guess, rush through it. Would kind of be an okay word. I don't know how else to say that, but I like understanding the outcomes of all that stuff. But I definitely think, for me personally, a lot of that stuff I do try to come from a biblical aspect, or at least an idea of I still care about the situation that happened, especially when it comes to other people. I still care about you, but it's like I can't just be stuck in a predicament forever. Like a decision is I'm gonna have to come to a decision no matter what. And it's either I'm not gonna like it, or you're not gonna like it, or neither of us are gonna like it, or we're both gonna be okay with it. So it's like there's so many things that you kind of got to take into consideration. And there's definitely some people that I'm great friends with, and it's weird because they'll have like moments where they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you should do this," and it's the smartest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, "Dude, how did I not think about that? You're a genius. I'm doing that right now." Yeah. And then the same person will be like, Did you even think about that? Did you just say what's on your mind? Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say. Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely some people that I definitely mute but it's almost like a thing. So I use an app called Discord. So you kind of talk to friends, and there's a difference between muting and deafening people. And muting, it's kind of like it's more the idea of you kind of mute yourself in the idea of you kind of don't respond to them, but you can still hear them. And deafening is just cutting them completely out, almost thing where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to your opinion at all, and you won't like hear what happens at all. I definitely have people that I guess are on both sides, just because like there's each one of my friends is good at some stuff, and then for everybody, there's gonna be stuff that you are not good at all. Like I was saying earlier, for the first time, you're gonna be bad, but some of my friends, it's more than the first time. It's like all the time. Sorry, guys, but there's definitely a lot of like stuff that goes into making a lot of these decisions, especially with other people, because you got other people's hearts and feelings like on the line. Like you don't want to break a relationship because you didn't think it through all the way, because you said something dumb or you listen to someone saying something dumb. Like it's always better to like take your time and like think about stuff and like pray or sleep on it than to just kind of go fast and go through it. So
let me add one thing to it. I think that if I had just a thought too, is that I've learned probably in the last 10, 15 years is just the value of people that have been there before you, and not just like my immediate friends. So, I mean, I'm far off 20 years from retiring, but I'm having conversation with people that are retiring because I want to just try, how do I set myself up? How do I start thinking 20 years, not just 20 minutes, right? Because great friendships think in decades, not just moments. And so do good decisions. And so I think I have a lot of friends. I think probably one of the reasons that most of mine are believers is because I've had 40 years of like conversations with people, and it's like I know there's different ones, but like one of the things in leadership that I kind of pride myself on is like I know a guy. You give me almost any scenario, I got somebody in mind. Like, hey, who's an expert on this and stuff like that. So I think part of that is I want like the best idea wins rather than like the person's value. But Jacob gets a lot of that from me. I think I like options. I like researching things. But I would say the most important thing is to have a process in that of like, when I come to the decision, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to think of this? You do need to spend some time alone, I think, just in your own thoughts and thinking. But if you spend too much, you can maybe drive yourself crazy. I think you do need to listen to your friends, but if you look too much, you're not going to make a decision on your own. You're going to value other people's opinions, or you're going to go to the people that you want, how they're going to tell you, and you're going to go to them. And it's like, and it's kind of like, hey, you're making a democracy decision and stuff like that. And I do, I think it's, it's a problem even in our society that we're not having conversations with people that aren't different than us, different backgrounds and all that stuff. So like I told you about the 6 guys that are, so it's like, obviously there's a lot of cultures on race and all of that stuff. So 2 of those are friends of mine. Well, one of them's my brother who's black, and then Uncle Bobby, who's African-American. And so in those kind of things, I want to understand from their standpoint, they'll be able to give me that from a different value than I can as a white man. And so I want to learn from that. There's some stuff that I wouldn't necessarily go to them on different things too. And so part of that is, man, God put in, how am I always building relationships? How am I always networking? I mean, one of the disciplines that I do several times a week, I try to 6 people. I just go through my phone. Hey, just thinking about you. Can I pray for you? What, depending who they are. And I would tell you probably half of them aren't believers, or maybe were at some point, or maybe I had a relationship with them. And I value that conversation. I want to know what people view, because I think truth can stand on its own. Like I started this podcast talking about this sense of objective truth from a relationship of marriage and what Christ gave us in that, in through Scripture. And I believe that it can take on even the robust dialogue against it. And so like when I hear someone talk about, oh, you should you guys should live together, you should do this together and all this stuff like that. Great. Let me hear it. Like,
you started a podcast?
No.
Oh,
but in all that, this podcast,
okay.
and stuff like that. Looking at that, I think that there's just components of that, man, of like, man, I want to learn from other people, and I want to hear what they're doing. And as let's engage in that kind of dialogue and all that stuff, so that if I go back, I'm like, okay, that's a great point. I believe all truth is God's truth. So when it comes down and there's great points or stuff we can learn, I'm an avid reader in that, like in that stuff that I read a little bit every day of different things and some of them are spiritual in nature. Some of them aren't. I want to know what the other. I can be wrong. I mean, there's stuff like that I was so 20 years ago, like I'm never going to, like they were red light issues and now they're maybe yellow light issues, or maybe I got just a different perspective of how I work on those in that relationship and how I communicate that. Cause I think for you, you're talking about like some of your friends like, oh man, I found one thing wrong, I'm out. Like we're such in a society today that wants to find something we disagree in order to dismiss somebody, which now makes people disposable. It's like we can ask people out over Discord or talking to them or have conversations that we've never seen before. We can break up or ghost people or do any of that stuff where it's like, man, it just makes your emotions, that it's not an equal relationship. You're going to compromise something in yourself and compromise in something every single time. And you may not feel it, and it may be a good reason, but like it's do the hard work of having good conversations and getting good opinions. And then you make the decision yourself. Be the master of your own domain in that aspect of saying, hey, God, you've called me to this point. I'm going to stand on this where I'm at. You've given me good wisdom. I mean, the Bible is full of people that listen to some people and didn't other ones. I think of just about this the other day. I was reading where Peter goes up to him and says something to Jesus. And you know what Peter's response is? Get behind me, Satan. Like he called who he ultimately built the church on. So that wasn't an eliminating conversation.
Yeah.
He called him the devil and say, get behind me, and all of that stuff. And so sometimes you're going to get bad stuff from good people. And listen, all of us, even good people, are great at making bad decisions. And so as we go in that, there's power in that of like, let's listen through that and do that. And many a time, some of my really good friends that help me with stuff will call me back a day or two later and say, hey, I got something else. I was praying for something else. I was going to the throne of God before you on that. Or I came across this on scripture. And most of those good friends are my six, not because they just give me good advice, but they call me out on my own crap. And they'd be like, man, you're being selfish, or you need to do that, or you need to go apologize. And it's great because one of the things I hope Jacob does is us being able to do that to each other, being able to stand up in Jacob's the age now. It's different when you're 10, but when you're 19 and you're a full grown man, to sit there and say, hey, Dad, I think you handled this wrong. And you need to go do this in a compassionate way, in a consistent way, in a clear way that's helpful and kind and not muddy or like blaming and all stuff. So I think those are other good ways to communicate and stuff like that too.
Man, you guys, this has been some great stuff from each of you, definitely. Real quick, want to do a quick pause because there is, I think I need to go put some more money in the meter. So real quick, if you guys just want to converse for a moment, feel free. I'm going to be gone for like 4 or 5 minutes, and I'll be right back. Great.
Some time later.
Hey, Devahntau, it out. How's it going? Good podcast so far. Not coming back though. Ever. I'm kidding.
How dare you?
So, a lot of what I see issues-wise when it comes to things like marriage, when it comes to the friends that you surround yourself with, a lot of these issues start with something that I only recently learned about after repeatedly hearing this word from the residents that you've helped to kind of bring in and how you helped to usher in that program. And it's this concept of intentionality. I heard that for the first time from Melissa.
Yeah.
And I said, the heck does that mean? I never heard the word in my life. And then suddenly I go to Journey, and everywhere I turn, I'm hearing, oh, I'm trying to be intentional with my time here. I'm trying to be intentional with students. I'm trying to be intentional. Trey's saying it, Josh saying it. Yeah. And I'm like, what is this intentionality? And when I look at the Ferrari and friends and boundaries, a lot of it starts with the intentionality of when you first start and seeing it down the line. So for the viewers that don't know what intentionality is, or that don't understand what it means to do that on a practical level, because a big mentality right now is, screw it, fuck it, whatever, YOLO, live life right now, you only get one. Can you explain to them what is intentionality?
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so part of this came out almost 15, 20 years ago. So when I was at a church in Atlanta with Pastor Dustin, and it was this
history to it.
I had been challenged to kind of think about being in ministry about 20 years at that time, and maybe a little less, and focusing on what I learned and who I was and what I could pass on to the next generation. Because I really believe in your 20s, you're kind of just trying to figure out what you want to do. In your 30s, you're kind of getting better at it. In your 40s, you're discipling it. You're just your purpose in your 40s and most of your 50s. And I don't mean that by exact birth dates, but I mean by that kind of mentality. Take your 20s, figure out some stuff, And if you discover that in your 20s and you deepen that kind of sense of I want to be really good. I want to be really great at what I do. And then how do I pass that on? Because you gotta live forever. So this was this concept of, for me, it starts with intentionality, and then was the way that I did was strategy. So this whole language of intentionality is think about it this way. If you're not used to it, is you do something unintentional, right? You trip, or you're rude to something, or you weren't paying attention and you turned right, or you forgot to hit send on a text, something that there was no really forethought or purpose even in that. So part of that is this component of intentionality. For me, I'm intentional. I want to be strategic. And how that works is kind of collaboration on the front end and evaluation on the back end. But the intentionality aspect is I want to use my brain. Great. We're in a place that we use our hearts, right? I feel that way. Great. And I tell my staff this all the time because somebody told it to me and I thought it was great. It was great. Use your heart. Lead with your heart. Start with your heart, but bring your brain with you. And there's that aspect of thought. Think about what you're doing. We intentionally do this on a lot of things. We use intentionality in the aspect of, hey, I'm going to sit. I didn't know how to get here today. You gave us the address. We asked for the address, what time we needed to be here. Let's plug it in. And now I'm intentional. I didn't just drive and let's go find where Central Boulevard is. I was intentional and I had a plan. And the GPS is everybody wants an intentional GPS. You don't want one who's yeah, whatever. You want one that's flexible, right? That knows you want it in real time. And that's an adaptability, flexibility, being fluid. That is being intentional, of planning. So there's this aspect of forethought, but also this aspect of planning. I want to get there. How do I get there? What are my incremental things that I have to do each and every day to get there? Maybe I'm just going to read a book for 10 minutes, or maybe more. A lot of people are oh man, I'm not a real reader. And I challenge Jacob this even stuff too. And our team is all right, well then instead of getting one book and reading for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours every day, get 5 books and read for 5 minutes on a myriad of topics, and just grab a pen. And if you read 1 page or 2 pages until you get a good thought and write it. I have 9 books in my study right now. Some of them have taken me years, some of them take me a month, because I just kind of write through them, because I'm a little bit more I'm ADD and OCD, which means it's got to be perfect, but not for real long, in that. So the intentionality is that part thought, which leads to planning. And let me have that plan. And then what I weave in is the sense of hey, I want to be intentional about this. Means hey, if I'm thinking about doing a podcast, I want to be intentional about it. What do I need to do on the front end? It starts with collaboration on the front end. That's the practical brass tacks aspect of it. I'm going to do this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to maybe read some blogs. Hey, what's the best equipment? What's the best way to do it? I'm going to collaborate with other people that have done it before. What does it feel like to be a guest? What are some things for a host? What are some of the things that we need? How do we get things set up? What do we do? Do I know my program? All of those kind of things. Like I'm collaborating on that because I'm new to this and I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm collaborating on asking other people to come into my student ministry. I'm being intentional at meeting parents, but I got to ask some parents what they see because I'm not one. I got to collaborate on this. And then when I do something, the back part of intentionality is evaluation. And I think that's one of the things that I bring that's actually a little, we do a little bit, but I'm more one who like, let's document, let's ask questions. And like, it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, my questions are like, what worked, what didn't, what was a little confusing, maybe, all this, a couple of those kind of things of asking some of those questions. I try to be a peddler of good questions because I think we come in a culture right now that people are really great at questioning, but they're not really good at asking questions. And so when you go in there, questioning has this condensation to it. It's got this intentionality of being like, why are you? I'm right, you're wrong. All of that kind of stuff. And so how do you become a great? You've asked some great questions today, Dante. I think it's great.
Thank you.
So on the back end, it's evaluating. Hey, how did I do? What did I do? And making sure that you're asking for things you can change. I mean, there's an aspect, and I do this in the academic world all the time. It's like at the end, like here are some of the questions: what worked, what didn't, what was confusing, I get questions asked by my 60 students a semester, which ones, hey, did he respond? And of course you get some that are going to just say, oh, he didn't do anything, because they didn't do well in their class, but that's such a rarity. And the rest of them, I was on the phone today with 2 different ones, and I've got them texting today because this semester starts this week, and I want to be intentional of that. So when I sit there and I want to be intentional with announcement. I want to be intentional with my time. I'm going to manage my time well. Am I asking for perfection? By no means. But that sense of intentionality is whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to put forethought to it. I'm going to have somewhat of a plan, and I'm going to get better at planning and better at planning, and I'm better at planning at it. And then I'm going to collaborate on the front side. This is what we're going to do. This is what I want to do. I'm going to invite people into that have done it before, who've maybe made mistakes. I don't know about you, but I've learned more from my failures than I have from my successes.
Absolutely.
So I could tell you 16 things to do that, like what not to do, great thing. And I haven't had that with kids. And we don't like that. Like when we're learning something new, like Jacob alluded to this and said it we want to get everything done the first time because we live in even more of a society where it's like, you got to really do something thousands of times to become proficient and then be professional in it. And so when you're intentional in marriage, like I have our things, we date weekly, we dialogue daily, we depart monthly, we try to go away and try to go do something. Megan and I, as a family, start doing stuff like that.
Big.
So here's the whole thing is, tell your plan, like if I asked you, man, how are you deepening your relationship with your girlfriend? Most people are, I don't know, we spend time together, I buy her a flower, I do, like, how are you getting to know her? Like, I'm still, after 23 years, I'm a student of my wife. I'm a student of my kids. I see what they tell me, and I also try to look a little bit of what they don't, because I want to see what's important to them. Because if he's important to me, I want to know what's important, what makes him feel valued and cared for. I'm intentional. I'm sitting there and being like, I'm going to do this with intent. My dad's a lawyer, came from a lot of that stuff too. Is like, it matters in the law if you intentionally. It's the difference between homicide and manslaughter. Is that aspect of, and then where to go. You have 10 beers and you hop in a car, you're an idiot, but you also have this thing of, you may manslaughter, and maybe the intent may be like, my intent was to drive drunk and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to. Intent matters. It's the difference between getting a life sentence and getting 6 months in some of those things. And so the more that you are intentional, and we desire intentionality. We get frustrated when it's not there in other people, but we rarely see that in ourselves. I want my phone to work. I want things to work. I want somebody else to be thinking about my needs and all of that stuff. So why not start with you? Be intentional about yourself. And as you move forward and you can go through that, you can move into any environment. Like, let's be intentional. I'm intentional where we sit on Sunday morning. I'm intentional where I sit, because I'm like, I have to sit, I have to solve problems. I'm intentional with when I go out of town. Hey, I'm letting people know my out of message. I'm trying to be as intentional so it doesn't just happen. I'm thinking, if somebody contacts me and I know I haven't opened my email, I'm intentional with not come off vacation for 7 days. I've not opened my email. I'm going to have 80
so
to 90
tough.
to 100 emails. Yeah, I'm intentional. I don't have my emails on my phone anymore because guess what? When I used to get stressed and I would pick one up and I wouldn't be able to focus on the people that are in the room. And I want to be able to do that. I'm intentional. I don't do that because now it's easy. It's easier said than done. It's hard because some people, but I'm treating people how to teach me. So they know that they're not. It's not sending it's like sending a text. Yeah, I have an Apple Watch, but I don't get my text on there because I don't. I got it. I've got it set up with my wife. Call right now. I was intent. One of the first things I did when I came in here, turn off your phone. Why? Because that can happen. And you showed a story about somebody that did that before. It's not the end of the world, but if we're intentional about hey, here's the plan. This is what I do. This is my checklist for this or for that, whatever. And then evaluation at the end. What can I do better? What can I help? And I think we all get better for it. And I think that's I'm a little bit more on the strategy side of hey, what do I intentionally want to accomplish? I think that's the question. And I'm really, I feel like I'm getting better at the strategy of how to do that. Because you can have great intents, but most people wish stuff to happen, but without any kind of, your intent is okay, what am I going to do? And then you got to have a plan, and then you got to have some kind of process and strategy to make that happen. So, does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for going.
Jacob, you want to add anything? Jacob's a pretty intentional guy. If you want to
Let's go, Jacob. What you got, man?
I mean, yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna top that. Honestly, that was pretty good. So, yep. But
I feel it. This has been a great segment. This is the first segment that I've managed to go this deep on the topic of things like marriage and friends and circle and things like that. And I'm all about it. I love it. This was awesome right here. So I appreciate that. And I think a segment that may be interesting to do is one that focuses on a strategy of how do you be intentional when it comes to having a partner, and not just what you want, but who you need to be yourself in there, and how you need to be, what you need to, how you need to react, and going and literally as each individual, even according to different personality types. People go by the INJF or ENJF, all of that. And so what those different responses could look like. And I think that would be a cool segment to maybe look at in the future.
Well, man, you can start today, dude. Part of that is just be intentional in yourself. And you don't have to tell anybody else you're being intentional. Just you get better and other people will notice.
100%. I think so. I think some people will notice the extra kick in the step, the extra proficiency. They'll be like, huh, you normally don't do that. Definitely. Well, you guys, I want to once again thank my guests. It's been Jacob Monahan, Kevin Monahan. It's got to be almost 2 hours. We're going on, about 1 hour 40 now. So we're going to have lots of greatness to be able to chop in. I want to thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having this. Has been fun. This is good.
Thank you so much. It's such a blessing to be an Inspired Challenge podcast.
It's thanks for having me. You're doing a great job, and keep it up, man. This is good stuff. And I think a lot of people need this, and hopefully it adds some value today. And man, it's good. Anything we do to help, let us know.
Awesome.
We want to help you win.
I appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Inspired Challenge Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you guys. So that is our final episode, and I loved it, man, because in there you got to see some of Jacob's thoughts on how he goes about it, him talking about how he likes to do research and get options and opinions is really good. Pastor Kevin talking about how he likes to do something similar, and then both of them like to put time in between what they're thinking about and executing on it, and then just everything about intentionality. And I am excited to do a segment just about how an introvert can be intentional in certain things, or how an extrovert, or how somebody who is extroverted but needs to recharge, or somebody that's introverted but likes extroverted things every now and then, and like what intentionality can look like from those different the different approaches and what different options a person can take. Because not everybody achieves the same goal in the same ways, and so just having a plethora of options might be interesting, or even just knowing what having some options looks like, what it looks like to be intentional. I was having a small group with a group of boys that I'm with Monday. And part of it was about stewarding. For those of you that aren't familiar with that term, stewarding means if like you're the person that stewards a ship, you're the person that drives it, you kind of allocate or you're responsible for how things go. And it talked about how you steward. We talked about how you steward your time, your money, relationships, how you put time and energy into those things, the importance you give them, and the strategy you come up with it. And that, I think, is what the key element is the strategy that you walk into something with, not just going into something and kind of blindly doing it, but actually going in with a plan of action. So that's definitely something that I want to put some effort into coordinating. But yeah, this has been an awesome 3-part series here. So I hope you guys also enjoyed it. And I want to prompt you again, like the video, leave a comment, share, subscribe. I need all of the engagement that I can get because I accidentally deleted all the videos on the channel. So yeah, but thank you guys for watching. And I'll see y'all on the next episode of the Inspired Challenge Podcast. I think my voice cracked on that last one.